there's really three ways to get a real estate deal done successfully. You find the deal, you find the money, and then you manage the deal. Now, what I found, Jason, is there's a lot of communities, there's a lot of programs out there that teach people how to find a deal. It might take them 12 months to find a deal, but for whatever reason, people find that deal and they almost feel like they're done.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?
Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Dallon Schultz, a seasoned fund manager and co-founder of Capitalist Pro, an automated CRM solution designed to help real estate investors raise capital more efficiently and effectively. Dallon, you've got a varied background beyond that. I first want to start with thank you. Thanks for being here today. I'm super excited for the conversation. And I would love to hear your story in your words rather than me reading it from the bio. So I'll open it up for you to tell us your story.
Awesome. Well, Jason, thank you so much for having me on. And I love the title of your podcast, Know Your Why, because I think that's what a lot of people are trying to figure out in life. And that's why they're bouncing around from different jobs, from W-2 to entrepreneurship to back to W-2, just trying to figure out where and how they fit into everything and really what excites them, what motivates them. So I love what you're doing with your podcast here and grateful for an opportunity to be on it. Now, for me, man, I put some thought into what I wanted to share and talk about today in regards to knowing your why. And I think for me, it really started back as a kid. And what I mean by that is my grandfather owned a bunch of multifamily apartment buildings as a kid, and my father managed them. And so I grew up doing a lot of that grunt work, a lot of managing. But when they say like, hey, real estate doesn't have to be tenants, termites, and toilets, you can own it. Yeah, I didn't know that at the time. I thought the only thing real estate was tenants, termites, and toilets. So it gave me, yeah, for a lot of people it is, right? Yeah. And so for growing up, like it was great. It taught me a good work ethic. I learned a lot of handyman type skills, but for me, that was not my why. I had no interest in doing that for the rest of my life. And as I reflected, as going through high school and starting my college career and starting to think ahead, I realized I wanted to make an impact. I didn't know how, I didn't know what that would look like. I just knew I wanted to make a difference in people's lives. And so that actually led me into the medical field. And I didn't want to be in school for 12 years. So I didn't want to be a doctor. And I had connected and looked up to a lot of people that made a good living that were registered nurses. So that was actually the direction I decided to go. And I was going to specialize. I wanted to get some experience, specialize, become a nurse anesthetist. They're the ones that give you the anesthesia when you go under, and make a few $100,000 a year. And at that point, I started realizing, yeah, it'd be great to own real estate. I just didn't want to do that dirty work. So my plan, my vision was to go into the medical field, make a few $100,000 a year, make a positive impact on people, because they're there, they don't want to be there, they're sick, they're hurt. Right. And then as I gained experience and was able to provide financially for my family, then I would transition into real estate in my 40s, 50s. Like that was my vision for it. So I went full steam ahead and met my wife in nursing school, and that was how I started my career, my life. And about 6 months after graduating, I got a job in the emergency room. And about 6 months after that, I was playing in a pickup soccer tournament at the local college. And I unfortunately broke my leg. As a kid was taking a shot, I got the ball out of the way. That entire kick went right into my tibia, went right into my shin, and I dropped. And I had 3 grown men have to carry me off the field. And my wife drove me to the ER that I had just started working at to get checked out. And that's when, after they did x-rays, that's when we realized that my leg was actually broken. And that's when it hit me. That's when I realized that this safe, secure job that I thought would be safe and secure wasn't. I knew people would get sick and hurt. I failed to realize what would happen if I was the one that got sick or hurt. And at the time, my wife and I had 2 kids. We have 4 now. But laying there in the hospital bed, wondering how I'm going to take care of my family, was a terrible feeling and a terrible realization that I don't wish upon any man, any husband, any father. It's just not a fun position to be in. And I realized something had to change. Something had to change quickly. So that incident, as rough as it was, that was really the catalyst to get me into real estate. So I started listening to podcasts, read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and 2 weeks after reading that book, we bought our first fourplex without any of our own money. And then a couple months later, we bought a second one. And then I learned about funds and syndications and raising capital, and everything just kind of snowballed from there. But I wanted to share that story because I think for a lot of people, they don't know what their why is. I didn't know what my why is. And to be honest, I think I'm still trying to figure it out. But looking back on how everything happened in my life, it happened for a reason. And if there's anything that I want anyone to take from that experience that I went through, for me, that was a very difficult and traumatic experience. For somebody else, it might be getting let go from their corporate job. It might be going through a divorce. It might be losing a child or something, right? I don't know what people are going through, but I do have a strong faith that whatever those challenges, those trials, those things that we go through that we feel like we can't bear, I believe that those need to happen in our pursuit of figuring out what our why is. And I still feel like I'm still trying to figure it out, but looking back, I can see how everything happened the way it was supposed to. And I wish I didn't have to break my leg to figure that out, but that's just what I needed at that time. So yeah, I wanted to start by just sharing that experience and how I went from being in the medical field into real estate and a fund manager and now operating a software company. It's all part of the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, a couple things to touch on there. With this podcast, it is the vast majority of the guests have had some life event, right? Good or bad, right? It's something like that. The broken leg, an illness. For me, I think that it was having my first kid that like flipped the switch. But I think that there's things that happen in your life that make I guess the reality of how unstable your stable job is very apparent. And I think that it's unfortunate that in a lot of instances, it has to be something kind of tragic or the broken leg, the illness, that kind of thing that happens before we realize that. But once you realize it, it becomes, at least for me, has become a very big focus just to see like how reliant you could be on, a specific job, especially, you work for someone else. But even if you own your own business, I mean, there's parts of owning your own business that if you haven't figured out how to have other people run your business for you, you're still very much in that position. And so, yeah. And then real estate can become a great additional source of income to help mitigate some of that risk. Well, I'll stop there. I want to let you kind of continue through your journey and so you came to that realization, but maybe talk about some of the steps. You bought the fourplexes, but from fourplex to owning a software company, there's a journey there.
Are you planning a remodel or construction project? Overwhelmed by the process? Over budget? Extended timelines? Strained relationships? We are all too familiar. At Lark Construction Services, we help homeowners and business owners take control of their construction journey, from reviewing bids and contracts to catching red flags before they become costly mistakes. Our Clarity Audit is a one-on-one expert review of your plans, estimates, or current progress, giving you the peace of mind and a defined action plan to move forward with confidence. Don't let confusion lead to costly errors. Visit larkconstruction.com and schedule your free call today. Lark Construction Services, saving you time, money, and stress.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is unfortunate that people have to go often through tragedy to get on the right path. And I think some people just need to be shaken. They just need to be woken up. We get so comfortable, or we get this idea of what and how we want our life to be like. And I think oftentimes unintentionally, I think we undershoot our potential. And so I believe that God, the universe, whatever you want to refer to that higher power as, has a way of course corrections along the way. And for me, that was my course correction, because I wasn't living up to my true potential. And so that's just my thoughts on that as to why, unfortunately, I feel like we need to go through some of those things, because what else would have like shaken me and woken me up to be like, whoa, what am I doing? What's going on? So we bought those first few fourplexes, and then just dove head into the world of real estate. And I always had this idea of wanting to own apartments, and that I'm sure was influenced because of my upbringing, and now looking up to my grandfather and better understanding now what he was doing. He was operating a business of buying apartments, and I was doing all the grunt work. So now that I had more clarity on that, I was like, oh, that would be, I don't know how he did it, but I want to figure it out. Because I always thought apartments were owned by super, super rich people. And then I attended a conference where I was introduced to this idea of syndication, or pooling capital together. And I realized that's how 80 to 90% of these properties are actually bought. It's through people like us that are throwing in 50,000, 100,000, and we pool our resources together and buy something much bigger than we could do on our own. And something again in my brain clicked. I was like, that's it. It just made so much sense to me. Like, you start looking at trying to scale and grow your real estate portfolio by buying single family homes, or in our case, fourplexes. I could have done it. I could have kept going. I could have kept buying those and probably done very, very well. But I think for me, it was this idea of partnering with people and having a team and doing something way more together in a shorter amount of time than we could on our own. And growing up playing team sports, I think I just grew to appreciate that, understanding that different players have different strengths, but when you play together, you're going to win, right? You're going to have a good experience. You're going to win. If you do lose, you're going to learn from it, but then you just keep improving. So I love that aspect of apartment investing, because it's very much a team sport. So I went head down into that. We acquired some small multifamily, and then we started pivoting and focusing more so on the capital side of the business and raising capital. Now, I told you from the beginning, I always wanted to make an impact. I always wanted to make a difference. I thought that was in the medical field. We could do a whole nother podcast of my issues with modern medicine and how that business and everything is ran, but we won't get into that here. The point is, I wasn't able to make an impact as much as I thought I'd be able to working in the medical field. And so when I transitioned out of that and got into real estate, I realized I could still make an impact. And like this aha moment, this enlightenment that I felt like I received, knowing that I can invest in things outside the stock market, I felt a pull to share that message, to share that information with the everyday American, the everyday person, because that's stuff that we're not taught in school. I had to find this out on my own through a podcast and a book when I was in my mid-20s. And it blew my mind. Why was this stuff not taught to me in grade school? And I know now it's not part of the design, but I just felt this pull to just share with people what I was doing. And so that is what transitioned us into more focusing on the investor relations side of the business and talking to people, educating them, and raising capital, because I knew I could make an impact. I knew I could help them in their financial future and just help them see things in a different way. And if nothing else, just educate them. Let them know something that I wish I found out sooner, even if they decided not to work with us. So we went down that path and started focusing on the capital for the impact. And also I realized looking for deals a few years ago and even now, it can be super, super competitive, especially when you get into the large multifamily space or any commercial real estate. So rather than competing with those people, I realized they're all always going to need money for the next deal. So why don't we start focusing on trying to connect with capital? And then rather than competing with these people, let's collaborate. If it's a deal that we want to be a part of, now we get involved by introducing investors and bringing capital to it so that, again, we can all win together. So as soon as we decided to make that shift, make that pivot, we realized our current system was absolute trash. We had like 5 or 6 different softwares that were trying to communicate with one another, and it was a disaster. We had the same leads in different areas, notes in different CR. It was a complete mess. And so that's what led us into designing and developing our solution, Capitalist Pro, which was an all-in-one system. Now, we're built on a very powerful engine. A lot of people are probably familiar with Go High Level. I know you are because you use it as well. But that engine is a blank slate. Like, for those that are using it or have signed up for it, they know how overwhelming it can be. Fortunately for Paul and I, who's our co-founder, we nerd out about that stuff. And I think it's because of my ADHD brain. I have to have systems. I have to have processes in place to help me get anything done. And then you introduce some tech that can do a lot of that for you. Mm-hmm. And we just went head down into developing this solution for ourselves, thinking we were the only ones with this problem. Come to find out we're not. Like, I'd say 95% of people out there operating a business, raising capital, they don't have good systems and processes in place, which prevents them from being able to automate or delegate. Right. And so through that process, it enabled us to then start offering this as a subscription and a service to other people as well. And so that's kind of how we went from how I went from ER nurse to real estate investor to capital raiser, which we still operate a multi-million-dollar real estate fund, but now into really focusing and helping people out on the automation, the tech, the systems, the processes, just so they can do more in a shorter period of time and just show up professionally.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, that's great. Thank you for the kind of, it is interesting how I think from the outside looking in, you don't necessarily, especially in the world of syndication, most people have a vision of what, sort of being in real estate looks like, and they don't realize what syndication is, what it all involves. There's a great kind of breakdown of exactly what that means. And yes, capital raising is, I think there's really two parts of a syndication that I think are probably the hardest and most time effort intensive, and one of those is capital raising. The other side is after you've bought it and you've got to actually manage it, because it is a business, as you mentioned. So there's getting that capital raising process in place is extremely important. What would maybe talk a little bit about how you approach it? You don't necessarily, not necessarily even at your, business level, but as a capital raiser yourself, what are the pieces? So maybe people listening understand, where automation can best be fit in.
Yeah, great question. First and foremost, I don't think you can automate 100% of a capital raise. Right. You can't. At the end of the day, you're asking these people and inviting them to invest $50,000 to $100,000 into your deal. No one's going to do that if they don't know who you are. And in order to connect and know who you are, you got to be having conversations like this. You got to be meeting in person. So there's a time and place for automation, and I'm happy to share my thoughts around that. I want to touch on something that you mentioned earlier. There's really 3 ways to get a real estate deal done successfully. You find the deal, you find the money, and then you manage the deal. Mm-hmm. Now, what I found, Jason, is there's a lot of communities, there's a lot of programs out there that teach people how to find a deal. It might take them 12 months to find a deal, but for whatever reason, people find that deal and they almost feel like they're done. Yeah. And it's like They find the deal, they post about it, and then they run that deal into the ground because they didn't manage it effectively.
Yeah.
Another thing that we've noticed is people will get an LOI or a letter of intent accepted, meaning like, hey, we want to purchase your property for this much, and it starts the conversation. That gets accepted, and then they're like, oh, shoot, we got to raise $10 million in 60 days. And they haven't been building those relationships for the last 12 months because they were so focused on finding the deal. So it unintentionally puts a lot of people in this pickle. And then they end up giving away 80 to 90% of the deal to somebody that can raise the capital. And what we found is that finding a deal, like even though that takes time, that's the easy part. That's the easy part. Raising capital.
It is the easy part.
It is. Raising capital and managing the deal takes time. And you do not have, like, we're all craving dopamine hits, just like the society we live in, social media, like we're always craving more dopamine hits. It's easy to get a deal from a broker, underwrite that deal, look at the numbers, and decide whether or not you want to move forward with it. You can do that in a day. You feel productive. You feel like you're accomplishing something. Raising capital and managing deals it's a long play. It's a long play, and you don't get those dopamine hits as frequently. And so for most people, not having a system in place to help them and to measure that effectively is where they're dropping the ball. Mm-hmm. You can't get a deal done if you don't have the capital. You can't return investors' capital if you don't manage that deal effectively. So the two most important pieces, the money and managing the deal, are often where people struggle the most. Now, partnering with the right people that can cover one of those two things or both of them, those are the people that are succeeding. Those are the people that are still, even in this down market, are still able to return capital to their investors. So that was my thoughts on that. And then back to your original question about how to introduce or integrate automation into the world of raising capital. I think one of the biggest mistakes most capital raisers make is they're spending their time with people that have no intention of actually working or investing with them. And it's because they're not qualifying or disqualifying that person soon enough. Yep. Now, there's a lot of different things that go into this. Part of it is because of desperation. They get an LOI accepted. They need to raise capital. They'll talk to anyone that will schedule a call with them. But then that conversation just reeks of desperation. And they're not able to build that trust in an appropriate manner to a point where somebody would actually feel comfortable. Not that you can't get it done. I know people that have bootstrapped it. They call up friends, family, everyone and their dog, and they're able to pull the capital together. But it's not a fun position to be in. Mm-hmm. So qualifying and disqualifying the leads is one of the most important things that I think any capital raisers can do before they even get on a call with somebody. And one of the best ways to do that we introduce to our users is something referred to as engagement scoring. So what this does is it tracks if they're opening an email, if they're clicking an email, if they're filling out a form, if they're scheduling a call, if they're registering for a workshop or a webinar. We assign a point system to those actions. So now we quantify it, and these actions accumulate. So at a glance, we can see who's more engaged than than others without having to go off memory or our thoughts or feelings about that person. We have quantitative data that shows how engaged that person is. So now when we go to connect or we do some outbound outreach, we're only focusing on those people that are engaged because we have that system already in place, and that's automated. Once you have it set up, it's automated and it's tracking that relationship. So we can be more intentional with our time and connect with people at the right point in their potential investment journey. So that's one example.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And thank you for sort of breaking down those parts. I literally left out the finding a deal part because it is the easy part. That's why I didn't even mention it in the beginning. It is unfortunately maybe not so much anymore, but it did dominate the guru / mentorship program like focus. Everything was about find your first deal. There's still a lot of it. I still see a lot on social media. Find your first deal in 90 days, blah, blah, blah. It's like, that is not the hard part. That is not at all the hard part. That's
and that's what they can sell, because
Yeah.
you can find a deal. You can underwrite a deal so you feel like you're making progress.
Right.
Raising capital, managing the deal, it's a lot of work. And those that do it effectively, they've been at it for a few years and they have incredible systems and processes in place to execute on it. So it'd be harder to sell like, hey, raise your first 10 million over the next 5 years or whatever the case is. Right.
Yeah.
So,
People want fast results, but
yeah,
you mentioned, sort of, you said this, you can't automate a capital raise completely, which is true. And I do think that's another thing, unfortunately, that you hear a lot about from a maybe a social media standpoint. And it's like, you just got to be able to put the right posts out there, and then you'll have investors pouring in. And it's like, these aren't small investments. It's not, buy a t-shirt that pops up on your Instagram feed. This is, 50,000, 100,000, sometimes more than that in terms of investments. And so there's got to be a personal side to it. So, I mean, you talked about the qualifying the leads. I'm assuming kind of your next step is getting on the calls with those qualified leads. What do you do from there? You have the call. I mean, how much of a mix of automation versus personalized do you have at that point?
So that call for us is a major anchor point. So most of our automation is leading up to that call. Now, post call, there's still a lot of systematic automations that we can do to move that person along more internally, less externally. And so, I mean, getting to that call, we talked about engagement scoring. Another thing we do is we drip. We have email drips that go out to that person. Now, that email is you. It's your voice. And if you can get people opening and clicking, that's showing engagement. Another thing we really push, whether that's before or after that call, are workshops and webinars. Because the sooner you can get somebody hearing your voice, seeing your face, and just connecting with you, even if it's virtually, that helps accelerate trust. So even if it's before a call or after a call, we still have them segmented in a list. So any workshops, webinars, guest speakers we have coming on, we make sure they get an invite to it, because that's still a way to nurture them, and it's a way to get them on that call. And we can see what they're interested in. If we're hosting a workshop about depreciation and tax benefits and somebody opts into it, but they don't opt into the self-directed IRA workshop, what does that tell us about that person and what they're interested in? So if they opt into the tax benefits, we tag them, taxes, and then with our outreach that we start transitioning into a little bit more manual or follow-ups, then we'll start going down that path of taxes rather than self-directed IRAs. So that's what I mean by like internally and externally. There's still things internally we can automate through the tagging, through the list segmentation, our reminders to follow up. Anytime I've left it up to my own memory to follow up with Jason in 30 days, guess how many times I actually follow up with that person in 30 days? Hardly ever, right? So the system creates that reminder. So I don't have to think about it. I just log in and it says, hey, reach out to Jason. And it's like, that was a month ago. What did Jason and I talk about? I go back into the CRM. I look at your contact card. I see that you registered for the tax depreciation webinar. I saw that we had a few text and email exchanges about this and about that. I have some notes written in there. I know that you're an accredited investor. So now when I reach out, I'm going in with all that information. So I'm much more confident and comfortable reaching out to you, because I know it's going to be a much warmer exchange than just blindly calling you out of the blue.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Makes total sense. It is I think a delicate balance. I like how you separated out, sort of the internal automation versus external, right? It's we all get cold emails, we all get cold texts, whatever it is, phone calls from people. And I get a bunch of them now. That's like, it's not even my name. It's like, hey, someone else's, it's like some random name, and they're like, we're following up on your application for this loan funding or something like that. We have $200,000 waiting for you. And I'm like, you didn't even get my name right. Like, I know that.
Yeah.
At least be smart about your spam. But I do think I think people talk about you need some number of, maybe it's 7 touch points or something like that, where with a person, and this isn't necessarily exclusive to capital raising, but you need a certain number of touch points with someone before they're going to actually, sort of buy whatever it is you're selling or invest in whatever it is you're talking about. And I think that's where that longevity piece comes in that you mentioned, where it's like, oh, nobody wants to buy the course that says raise $10 million in the next 5 years. Like they have that will sell none. There'll be,
Yeah.
even though the value of that is actually tremendous, because that means you're really doing it. And if you exceed that number, great. But what that sets you up for is the ability to, sort of almost snowball that over time. So I do think that it's an important distinction between the sort of internal facing and external facing part of that capital raise. What do you think do you see any shifts, any sort of forward looking insight on capital raising that you have, or that Capitalist Pro is focused on? What do you see kind of coming in the near to medium term future?
It's a really great question, and what I'll share with you are my thoughts and opinions around this, and you're going to hear somebody say the complete opposite and contradict. And
of course,
and I think with anything in life, you find what resonates with you and lean into it. And if you have that faith and belief it's going to work, guess what? It's probably going to work. Okay.
Yeah.
So my thoughts and beliefs around this, and where this world of capital raising is going into, is with AI just running rampant, right? Like there's photos, videos, voices, phone calls, things that people have never even said or done that are showing up all over the internet. I think it's going to be even more difficult to build trust with people at that level that's required for them to feel comfortable wiring you $100,000. So my belief is that conversations and podcasts like this, Jason, are going to be key moving forward, because this is a real conversation we're having. Now, somebody could take our voices, our faces, and make up their own podcast from it, right? So, but with that being said, I think having real life conversations like this, where you know that person's actually talking, you can see them, you can hear their voice, it's not AI, I think are going to be critical. Even more so, I think in-person events, in-person interactions are going to become even more important, because it's going to get to a point where you're not going to be able to believe anything you see on the internet. But at the same time, people are so afraid to get out of their house and to go to networking events and to travel and to shake somebody's hand and to look them in the eyes and have a real conversation. There's younger generations that don't even know how to talk to people, because they're just consumed by their phones and technology. So my belief and opinion around this is that it's these types of conversations, and those that can truly communicate their thoughts, their feelings in a real environment, those are going to be the ones that are going to effectively be raising capital, because people are going to know who they're talking to, who they're talking with. Now, that's not to say that a lot of these tools and AI pieces can't accelerate some of that or assist, but I think that's the important distinction here. Is I believe a lot of these things can be effective and powerful tools. If you're crappy at raising capital and building relationships, that tool is just going to accelerate how crappy you are at raising capital and building relationships, because you don't have a good system or a process. I don't think it's going to replace it. I think it can really help or hinder depending on how it's being used.
Yeah, I agree. I think that all, it makes a lot of sense. I think the ability to create a good in-person relationship, and I mean, when I say in person, those networking events and things, but also just this, like a Zoom call. I mean, not to say it'll never happen, but I would imagine, it's a lot harder to put the AI version of yourself on a Zoom call with someone and trick them into thinking it's really you. So I think that there are certain places where it really won't be applicable. And so it will be, investors will look at, like serious investors, those qualified leads you spoke of, will look at real ways of getting to know their sponsor and their operators. And it'll be, whether that's in person or like this. Also, it's going to come, I think, a lot. Track record's going to become almost more and more important over time, where it's like, okay, here's a new person. I don't even know if it's a real person. I'll go with this guy who's been doing this since, 1998, and where there was no AI or ability to do any of this. So I think that could become a big piece of the puzzle, kind of how, moving forward.
Yeah, I think AI and tech can really help build awareness for people. But here's the thing too, the barrier now to creating content and getting your name out there is so stinking low. So now you're competing with all this noise as well. So with that being said, I think it can be a great way to build awareness so people are aware of who you are and what you do. But I don't think it's going to be the reason they decide to write you that check. I think there's more personal touch points and interactions that are going to have to be even more important to be accomplished before somebody's comfortable moving forward.
Yeah, completely agree. Well, let me switch gears. I always ask every guest, what is your why? And you talked a little bit about sort of how difficult that can actually be to have a concrete answer. I also do think it changes over time. I've played with the idea before of changing the name of the podcast to The Evolution of Why. Haven't done it yet, but I do think it is something that shifts over time, and it has shifted for me. So, but I want to give you the opportunity to answer the question in honestly, whatever way works for you, whether that's a concrete why, things that are important to you, an evolution of why, however you like, but yeah, please, I'll open that up to you, Dallon.
Yeah, like I mentioned at the beginning, I want to make an impact. If I feel like I'm making a positive impact and this is, I don't know why this is just who I am. Like I don't want to make an impact to be famous or to be heard. I want to be acknowledged with the effort and the sincerity and the intention that I'm putting into whatever it is that I'm doing. So a lot of people are probably familiar with the 5 love languages. Number 1 for me is words of affirmation. So I don't know why. It's probably something how I got brought up. Who knows what, for whatever reason. But I want to make an impact, and I want to know that I'm making that impact. And part of that comes from that words of affirmation. So for me, that impact, it's going to change over time. Before is in the medical field, and I had really good interactions with people. I've been with people in their last days of life, and I've been able to connect and have conversations with them, with their family. I've seen things that most people probably wouldn't be able to handle and bear working in the emergency room. But still, in those moments, I was able to have an impact in the way of a support system, if you will, words of comfort. For me right now, I want to make an impact for our users. We are on a mission to develop the world's best CRM for people raising capital. And the beautiful thing is, it doesn't have to be for real estate. At the end of the day, it's about building trust. So rather than people thinking about the sales pipeline, we're reframing their mindset to view it as a trust timeline. What do you have to do to build that trust so somebody's comfortable investing capital with you? Because in this day and age, especially with all these baby boomers selling their businesses, you and I, before we started recording, you're in the process of acquiring a business, right?
Yep.
Acquiring businesses, investing requires capital. It requires money. It doesn't have to be your own. So if you can develop a system and the skills to be able to effectively raise capital, you will not have any issues finding any opportunities for employment, for work, and do whatever it is that you want to be doing. So for us, our primary why right now is to create a tool that's simple, automated, and can really help our users execute on that ability of raising capital. So that's more of the professional why. The personal why, I got 4 little kids at home. I got a 10-year-old, I got an 8-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So trying to be the best father I can be, and the best husband I can be, and the best business owner I can be is a challenge. So a more personal why for me is wanting to make a positive impact in all those areas in life. And it doesn't come easy. It's very difficult. And so for me, a lot of it has become this personal journey of growth and development. And if I'm in a funk, I can look back at what I've done that past week that probably caused me to be in that funk. And when I feel like I'm in the groove or in that flow state, I can go back and see what got me in that state. And the idea is to just try to be there as much as I can to really optimize, because if I can do that, then I'm going back and I'm making that impact, which goes back to my original why. Now, it's not super specific. I don't have that right now. I just know in general, I want to make a big impact. I want to encourage people. I want them to feel motivated and empowered to do whatever it is that they're doing. And for us right now, it's raising capital.
It's great. I love it. I love the idea of impact. When people hear this and they want to connect, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
LinkedIn. I've put off creating a presence there for far too long, but that's where I'm going to be doing most of my post and content. Also on Instagram as well. So having a CRM, a lot of people want to see and understand how it works, different tips, tricks, techniques, and things like that. So we're going to be putting out more of those video type of content on Instagram and YouTube. So, but LinkedIn would be the best place to connect. And then we can just have a conversation from there.
Okay, that sounds great. We'll make sure we put that in the show notes. Well, Dallon, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing all that you did. I really do appreciate it, and I love the focus on having an impact. So thank you for being here and sharing your story.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jason. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks listening, make sure you connect, and please like, rate, and review the show so we can continue to get great guests. And as always, thank you so much for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?